Okay? Famous Jesus Lord, lunatic, liar, and a legend. Okay? That's what this one is. Okay? And why we set this one up at this point in time is because I want to show people very early on that you can't dismiss Jesus as a good moral teacher, or a philosopher, or a sage, or an enlightened soul, or any of those words that are the preferred description for Jesus in today's Western European, Northern European world. Those are not possible. Okay? He has to be one of these. So I want them to see that. Now, what I'm also trying to do is, this is the second study because the next two studies we will cross off the other alternatives. So I don't plan to answer all of this in one study. But it's a hook to get them to keep studying. Okay? And what I do in this study is I draw the flow chart, which I'll write up on here for you. And then as we go through the other studies, I have them cross out what they think is most improbable. Okay? And you actually build a case study by study for people, all right? But I start off with my buddy. We're having our second latte. At this point, usually I try to have them at my house because I find your witness at your home. And those of you who are campus ministry people, I understand you have to take the studies as you can on campus. But as soon as you can get them into even a brother's household, sister's household, and they can see, believe it or not, your relationships, the way the brothers hang out, the sisters hang out, is amazing to them. It's really pretty cool. And even if you don't have much money, you're making macaroni and cheese and Spam, but you made it with love and care, they're like, wow, check this out. They took care of me. So I try to be hospitable as soon as possible. That means not putting them in the hospital, but taking care of them. Okay? I love firing up my barbecue and just flat making, especially where we're trying to evangelize and getting men in the kingdom of God. So most men are far from being vegans. That's all I can say. So let me throw a steak on for you, and we'll talk about Jesus a little bit. Okay, they love the steak more than Jesus at this point. That's all right. Whatever it takes. So now that we're sitting here, he's had a piece of my steak. He's doing fine, and I say, okay. What makes somebody a controversial person? What makes someone a controversial person?
Sometimes against the grain.
Okay, against the grain, what does that mean?
But don't go the day they have their own way of looking at things.
Okay. We're passing this out now. This is the compendium that has all these studies put together with the questions on it. The questions have a bold-faced Q. They're the questions I actually ask in the study. Okay, and so we should be on page 3 at this point. Okay, we're still answering the question, what makes somebody controversial? They go against the flow, go against the grain. What else?
What they say is polarizing.
What they say is polarizing. Okay, what else?
They go against the grain, but there's also a lot of people who are for it.
Okay, so they're not just a loner, they're kind of against the main flow, but they have a following. Okay, yeah.
They don't necessarily value approval.
They don't care what people think. That's very, very true of controversial people. Or they do, and they try to get a certain response all the time. But a lot of times they don't care at all. Yeah. Anything else?
There seems to be contradictions with who people say it.
Okay, contradiction with who people say it's. This is, I know it's not super after your time, but you guys didn't really grow up with Michael Jackson. Okay? I remember when Michael Jackson came out with the Jackson 5. I was a little kid watching television, and all these kids came out, they had the same skin color as you. Okay? A few years go by, and then Michael's on his own, okay, and I don't know whatever happened to Jackson 4, went elsewhere. He was pretty cool, he was dancing pretty awesome and all that, and then a few more years go by, and hang on, his face is starting to change. That's looking an awful lot like Janet Jackson. What's that? Well, hey, a few more years go by, is he a black guy anymore at all? What's going? Okay, first off, is he a white or a black person? Is he a guy or a girl? And then all kinds of stuff happens with accusations of finagling with kids on his property, and some people say that just haranguing him. Others, he had a following, he did not have a following. That's a controversial person. And then he writes these songs like Heal the World, and Black and White, and stuff that's like super awesome. You're like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, let's do it. You know, and then is he a freak? And is he a child molester? I mean, what is going on? Yeah. Here's a controversial person. Right? I can say Maggie Thatcher.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maggie Thatcher. How many of you think that was the way England should have been run right there? Yeah.
No, don't let that.
We of course have, I mean, I can say our own fair, we have Reagan, okay, interesting. Bill Clinton, people think personal morality has nothing to do with leadership. They love Bill. That's all it is. But it's controversial. Okay, so I'm going to show, I think that Jesus Christ was probably the most controversial person in world history. And I'm going to show you why. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you some of the things that not a church said about Jesus or anybody else said about Jesus. I'm going to read to you quotes out of the mouth of Jesus himself about himself. And I want you to imagine if you had met me, when you met me 2 weeks ago in university, and I shared a little bit with you, if I came up to you and said a couple of these things, how you would have reacted to me if I said this and I meant what I said. Okay, so put it in the mouth of a real person here. Look over in John chapter 5, and at this point I left my friend with the challenge to read through John and write down the I am statements of Jesus and what he thinks they mean. You got to get your non-Christian friend reading the Bible as quickly as possible. It does not take a long time to read the Gospel of John. 3 chapters a day, you're done in a week. And that might take you 20 minutes a day, honestly. Is your eternal soul worth that investment? And I challenge my friend to do that. Come on, man, read the Bible. Read it. Come on. It's not going to hurt you. Okay? John chapter 5. How about this one? Verse 39. Okay? You search the Scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, and it is they that bear witness about me, and yet you refuse to come to me that you may have life. So it's like me coming up to you and saying, I meet you on campus at Miles, right? You ever read this book, Miles? It's about me. It's the Bible. All about me. Now, you say that to Jewish people? This is sacred scripture? Okay? I guarantee you it's a 10 times stronger reaction than it would be somebody in London. And Jesus said, you guys all have your quiet times. You're reading this. It's about me. Don't you get it? Whole book. What kind of a nutcase would say something like that? Okay? Then he said this. Okay? John chapter 8, verse 12. Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Okay? How would this scripture be changed in meaning if he said, I'm a light in this world? Instead of I'm the light of the
People
world.
love it. It fits right in.
Okay, but what's the difference, quite honestly, in content? If I said, I'm a light.
All of the light, or you're not light?
Okay, and what do you think he means by light? Don't assume that your friend would understand this, non-Christian. Yeah, what do you think? What do you think he means?
Is it when, I probably be wrong, but is it when in Genesis when it said, let there be light, and then everything came to?
Now that's a very profound truth. I wouldn't expect I think that we have physical light because of Jesus. I do believe that. Okay, but I don't think that that's what he's meaning in John. So my friend might very well be confused. So I say, here's one of the things. You started reading John. You got to help them, coach them through. Light and darkness is a metaphor the whole way through the Gospel of John. Light means truth. It means what's good. It means what's right, open, honest, love in some cases. But it's good things. And it's the truth of God. Okay? Darkness is everything opposite. It's sin, it's ignorance, it's hatred, it's against God, it's not being open with your life, it's all of these things. Okay, so he's saying, I'm the light of the world. We have a saying, at least in American English, about being the life of the party. Now, it's one thing if I say, you know, Mr. Snell here, he's the life of the party. When he shows up, things start happening. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it's kind of boring. People, you know, they're with a little chip dip and kind of a little awkward. He comes in, people start having a good time. Music starts happening, the conversation. Okay, it's quite another thing if he says that about himself, right? If he comes in, Eddie Manning, I'm the life of the party. I mean, you all know I'm the life of the party. Till I show up, since the party's not happening. This is about what Jesus is saying here, only times 100. Okay? It's extremely arrogant. What is the implication? I am the light of the world. One, there's no other light. What else does it mean?
Everything else is in darkness.
Say it again.
Everything else is in darkness.
Yeah, if you're not with me, man, you're in the dark. You have not figured it out. You don't have a clue. You're not with me, you don't have a clue. You think you're smart. You're really not. You're insane. You haven't figured out the biggest clues of the universe until you have me. I'm it. I turn the light on. You're in a dark room until I walk in. What kind of person says these things? Okay? Then he goes to the same chapter. All of John 8 is just ridiculous. John 8, verse 46. Okay? What does he say here? Okay? Remind you, in this point, he's surrounded by people who want to kill him, his enemies. And he says, which one of you convicts me of sin? If I tell the truth, why do you not believe me? Okay, so could you imagine, I'm talking to my buddy here after he's had a steak in my house, and I say, even with your closest friends, you're sitting around after you had a beer on a Friday night, and you ask the question, you got 7 or 8 of your closest buds around, you say, hey, which of you can confuse me or accuse me of doing anything wrong? Could you even ask your closest friends that question? This is a bunch of enemies. And he says, go ahead, I want to hear it. What are the accusations? They have nothing to say. Nothing to say at all. They accused him later on because of what he said about who he was, not what he did. Even when he said before, there was another place they were going to stone him, he said, for which of my good deeds you're going to stone me? Oh, it's not for anything you've done, it's for what you said about yourself. Okay, so what he's saying, these claims really bugged people back in the day. For example, look later on in the same chapter, verse 58. Okay, actually start in verse 57. So the Jews said to him, you are not yet 50 years old and have seen Abraham. Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. Oops. So they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. Okay, so this is a bizarre passage. I'm talking to my friend here. What do you think he meant? It's even bad English grammar. Before Abraham was born, I am. I mean, that's, what is he, like failed his SAT test? What kind of university? My Lord, he done. I hate that song. My Lord, he done. Got a GED. He done got a GED. Okay. What does that mean? Yeah. Now that's exactly the right answer, and my non-Christian friend would not know that. But if you imagine, and it's really hard for us to think like a non-Christian. That's what I'll explain to him in a minute here. But what do you think, if you read this text for the first time, what would you think it meant? Before Abraham was, I am.
But Jesus has always existed.
Yeah, most of my friends get that. They sit there for a little while and they go, is he saying like he's either lived multiple lives over and over again, or he's always been around? He's always been around. He never had a birthday. Imagine that. Hey, when's your birthday? I don't have one. No, really, I don't have a birthday. I've always been. If I said that to you, and I really meant it, I've actually always been. And then I say, and to make matters worse, then I share with them, this word I am for Jewish people, this is the first time God identified himself in the Old Testament to Moses, the guy who gave us the 10 Commandments. When Moses wanted to know who's calling me to do this job, he said, my name is basically I am. And from that time forward, it became such a holy name that no Jew would say it with their mouth. They abbreviated it. They often would come up with other words like El Shaddai or Elohim, the God Almighty, or the God who sees, or some other name, but they wouldn't use the name because it was too holy even to say. No, so not only is Jesus saying the name, he's saying, that's my name, which was total blasphemy. The worst thing you could do as a Jew was to claim that. That's why the very next verse, the Jews pick up stones to kill him. Yeah.
So when he said I am, would he have actually used the full name of Yahweh?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, probably the Aramaic form. Yahweh, Yehovah, I don't know what he would have said. But he used he used the name that all the Jews then were like, I don't believe he said that.
So
You're dead. You are dead. Okay? And they just picked up stones to kill him. I mean, nowadays people water down Jesus so much that nobody wants to stone Jesus. They want to make him a philosopher.
Yeah.
Because they're ignoring what he actually said about himself. Okay? Then I explain that a little bit to him. Then I go on to look at John chapter 10, verse 30. Here's another crazy thing. He says in John chapter 10, verse 30, I and the Father are one.
Nice.
What does that mean? What is he actually saying here? Even the slowest non-Christian figures this one out. Okay, he's basically saying that me and God are, what does it mean to be one? Equal? The same? Inseparable? You've seen me, you've seen God. I'm God. And I said, do you realize how radical this is? No other founder of any world religion ever said this about himself.
How do you come around the individualism in this? I'm trying to think as, you know, because they have difficult to understand what the one concept like that is one, or the closest to one.
They don't have a problem with this passage.
Is this
No,
easier?
because I just say they're equal, they're the same, they're identical, they're inseparable. You see one, you see the other, and let's do this to make sure we can get through time-wise. Let's just save all your questions to the very, very, very end, and then we'll deal with them. But they don't have a problem with that. This verse. These are the ones that, of all the different claims of Jesus, I've picked out the easiest ones for people to get shocked by, because they actually get it. Like the very next one, John chapter 11, verse 25. Imagine that you're at the funeral of your brother, and you were very, very close. Okay, and then your friend comes and attends the funeral, and he comforts a bit, but he actually says some very disturbing things. It says in verse 25, I'm the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? What is Jesus saying about himself? And do you believe this? What is he saying?
You can live forever.
You can live forever. But it's conditional, isn't it?
Through him.
Yeah. I'm the door to living forever. You'll never die. It's through me. This is at the funeral. She's bawling her eyes out. She misses her brother. He comforted, he cried with her, all this kind of stuff, but he said, hey, I'm the resurrection and the life. So that says two things there. What does that say? Resurrection and life.
That death is not the end. The resurrection.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that you will just go on living forever as you are. It's implied you will die physically, but there will come a resurrection. The power behind you coming back from the dead is me. And I will sustain you into all eternity. That power is also me. Now I'm going to give you a little sample right here and right now, and I'm going to call your brother out of the grave. But the only reason I'm doing this is to prove what I'm saying right now. The real miracle is what I'm saying, not what I'm about to do. But I realize you need some proof. Okay, Lazarus going out. 4 days later. Jesus wept. We always think it's because he related to them emotionally in pain. And maybe that probably is a better translation. But imagine Jesus knowing where Lazarus, who was a pious Jew, who also loved him, where was Lazarus at that point in time? Resting in the bosom of Abraham, whatever that means, in peace. And imagine the horrible world he was about to bring Lazarus back into, his friend. And we always think, oh, he was commiserating with Martha and Mary. You probably wept, oh, I'm really, really, really sorry about this. Come on out. Back into this trashy world of sin. And now you're going to start getting really persecuted because I did this to you. In chapter 12, it said that the Jews also began to plot to kill Lazarus because he was too big an advertisement for Jesus' divinity. John chapter 14, verse 6. The kicker. I hated this verse before I was a Christian. I went after this one with all vengeance because this was very plain. And I'm like, okay, you know, when kids go to a daycare center and they're like, 6 years old, 5 years old, they're too young to get grades on reading, but they get little kind of comments on their behavior. And the kid who gets, does not play well with others would have been Jesus among other world religion founders. Does not play well with others in the sandbox. Look at this. Chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. What is he saying? He says 3 things about himself. 4, actually. 4 things about himself here. What are they? What does I'm the way mean?
You have to go through
Okay.
The way of life.
on your direction, your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah?
He's saying he's the way instead of a way, so there's not other routes, so he is the only way.
Exactly. He's the only way to God. You got to go through him. Yeah?
It's the solution.
Yeah?
The solution is their problem.
Yeah. And when people say, how do you know the right way to live? Well, I do. And we as Christians, if we actually say that, we sound super arrogant, but it's, in ourselves, we should be 100% confident we actually do know the right way to live.
Yeah.
Without ever, that's just because God entrusted that with us. We don't deserve that.
Yeah.
But we do know the way to live. It's imitating Jesus. How you love your neighbor, how you love yourself, how you love God, how you love the environment, all that stuff. Right? And then the truth. He says he's the truth. What does that mean? In this pluralistic society of postmodernism.
What is an absolute truth?
There-
There's only one way.
There is a truth. And I'm it. You want to know what's right and wrong, what's up and down, north and south, east and west, I define all that. Anything that deviates from me is a lie. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Most Christians, you need to be strong in what Jesus says here, without being arrogant, okay? And then he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I think both how we live our lives here and now, but also I'm the way to eternal life. And you will not get to God except through me. I don't care if you've got a good conscience. I don't care if you're in the rainforest and never heard about me. Let's not get wishy-washy on this stuff. If there's any other way other than Jesus, the crucifixion was superfluous. People don't have faith, they're lost. That's why you got to share your faith. That's why we got to get missions out the door. There's a lot to do here. But that's beside the point. I don't say that to my friend having a steak in my house on the second study. But I'm saying to all you to keep sharing your faith like maniacs, okay? All right, so now I've said all this stuff, and I said, remember I told you he's the most controversial person on earth. Now you see why. And Jesus was killed because of what he said about himself. Now you've got this flow chart. And what I do is I never just present the flow chart ready-made to my friend. It's much more impacting to have a blank piece of paper and you say, okay, so what we have is we have Jesus' claims. And I write this out in front of him, and we piece it together as he gives me the answers, because it's him coming to conviction himself. Okay, what are the possible alternatives to Jesus' claims? In the most basic sense of the word. If try to think this through without looking at the flow chart in front of you. See if you can do this as the non-Christian with me. Okay, what are the possible alternatives we have with these kind of claims from Jesus?
Delusional.
Okay, which means what about?
Crazy.
Which means what about the claims? I'm not talking about Jesus, I'm talking about the claims.
They're not true.
Okay, not true. That is one option. What's another option? True. Okay? Okay, that's another option. So is there a third option?
Partly true. No, I know it's
Okay.
not, I know it's not in your flow chart, but it could be. Some people think some of these make sense, and I agree with them.
Okay,
But
let
some
me ask you
people
something.
don't. All right.
Ask me if I'm honest.
Are you honest?
Usually.
And now you are.
Does that mean I'm honest?
Means you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Partially doesn't exist.
yeah.
Not with claims this black and white. I dismissed that out of hand, because that's not, you can't, I mean, basically Doug Jacoby gave an example many years ago. He said, imagine if I presented a 3-course meal to you, and it was really awesome, it was organic stuff, and all kinds of great fiber, and fresh, and all that. But I said, 80% of this meal isn't poisonous. Would you eat any of it? Okay? And to eat the whole thing certainly would kill you. So to take the whole Jesus if part of it's not true would certainly kill you at some point. So that's dismissed. I dismissed that out of hand. Usually if that one comes up, you got to feel that route. Partially, but then how do you decide what's true about Jesus and what isn't? I mean, it gets down to your own perception, or what's the deal? Okay, so let's leave this one alone for a while. What are all the ways, without looking at your chart, that these claims could be not true?
It's crazy.
Okay, what does that mean? You're coming to a conclusion. How could that, what does that mean about the not trueness?
He doesn't realize the culture.
He doesn't realize they're not, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Jesus. Jesus thinks they are true. But not true. Okay, so that's one way. Okay, in which case then you draw, so you got to take it step by step with the chain reaction, otherwise you can lose people. So what does that mean? If he actually, and I come up to you and I am to let it roll. I mean, really. The Bible's written entirely about me.
Crazy.
Okay, and you make a face like that, don't get the picture if you can. People conclude that about me without me trying to make that face. Okay, so he's crazy, or we could say, mentally unstable. Okay, this is the lunatic. This is the lunatic one. Okay. Okay, so what's another way that they would be not true? He knows they're not true. Jesus knows not true. And what's the conclusion then?
He's a liar.
Okay, he is a liar. Very few people, even the staunchest of atheists, want to say Jesus lied. There's something about Jesus. It's kind of holy. Okay, we'll get to that later. Okay, now, is there any other way that these could be not true? If he never lived, or
Never made the claim.
never said them. Okay, so never lived or said these. Okay, then you got the old legend. Now, remember I told you, I'm not going to conclude all of these things in this one study, but I'm trying to show to my friend, there's only a few things that you can do with Jesus here. Once you see how radical what he said is. Okay. Now let's just take a couple of things kind of to start off with. The lunatic one, what I usually do with that is I open up to something like, look at John chapter, or rather Matthew chapter 5.
Help us out, Chris.
Matthew chapter 5. I said, now this is from what was probably Jesus' most famous sermon. The sermon is called the Sermon on the Mount. And it's where Jesus kind of summarized the core of his teaching. And it's from where much of our legal systems and ideas and ethics in the, around the world, but especially in the West, have been derived, actually, from this stuff. Matthew chapter 5. Now remember, we're trying to think, is this a crazy person? And you have these kind of things being said in chapter 5, verse 38. Again, you've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, do not resist the one who's evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. You've heard it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and he sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Does this sound like a crazy man? Or does it sound like, I mean, honestly, if the world obeyed this, where would we be today? I'm just looking at one paragraph out of the mouth of Jesus here. Or how about one sentence, chapter 7, verse 12. Everybody in the Western world has heard this one. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Do to others as you would have them do unto you. Okay? One sentence out of the mouth of Jesus. If people did that, where would the world be today? I mean, honestly. This kind of forgiveness of enemies, this is really agape. It's really, really unique. And I said, there's a lot more things you can read, and I tell my friend, read all of Matthew 5, 6, 7 when you go home, and try and think about, is this a crazy man saying these things? So I'll let you deal with more of that yourself, okay? But you see how people reacted to him. You see Jesus' influence in art, in literature, in law, the making of laws. There's so much world influence from Jesus that there's really positive and really good. Orphanages, hospitals, all kinds of stuff. But this doesn't seem to be a crazy person we're talking about, although he said extremely radical things. You make your own conclusion when you study Matthew 5, 6, 7. Then I'll go and I'll say some other things about, okay, have you ever lied? And then before they answer, because I don't want to shame them, I say, I've definitely lied a bunch. Okay? And I know that when I lie, the times that I've lied, why do I lie? Why would you lie?
It's easier.
Why is it easier? It's easier at the time. It usually gets kind of complicated because they have to lie upon the lie upon the lie, etc. But what motivates a person to lie?
Want to look good?
You want to look good. What else do you lie for?
Cover up a mistake.
Cover up a mistake? What else?
Some kind of benefit.
Avoid consequences?
Some kind of benefit.
Some benefit to gain something. Okay, these are all the reasons why we lie. If you look in Mark chapter 14, Jesus is on trial. And he's given yet one more chance to get out of the consequences of what's about to happen to him. They had paid off one false witness after another to testify against him. They couldn't get their testimonies to agree, so even by their own law system, they'd have to drop the case. So they finally put Jesus under oath, and he could have just kind of stayed quiet, or he could have lied, or you know, whatever. And Mark chapter 14, verse 55, and they led Jesus to the high priest, and the chief priests and elders and the scribes came together. And Peter followed him at a distance, right in the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with guards and warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many bore false witness against him, but their testimony did not agree. And some stood up and bore false testimony and witness against him, saying, we heard him say, I will destroy the temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands. Even about this testimony they did not agree. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? But he remained silent and made no answer. Again the high priest asked him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his garments and said, what further witnesses do we need? You've heard his blasphemy. What is your decision? And they all condemned him as deserving death. And some began to spit on him and to cover his face and to strike him, saying to him, prophesy. And the guards received him with many blows. What did Jesus get for his lie? Beaten, tortured, shamed in the worst way Jewish people knew. Crucifixion was the ultimate curse, even according to the Old Testament. Okay? Not only that, if he did lie, he convinced all 12 of his closest followers to maintain the lie. Not a one of them broke down. Although all of them tortured, and in all cases except for John, to death, killed, martyred. And not one of them cracked. There is no reason why Jesus, he didn't gain anything in this life, and he was shamed. Both in the eyes of the Greeks and the Romans and the Jews. Crucifixion was the ultimate shame. This really doesn't make any sense at all. Okay? Now, as far as the legend thing is concerned, the next time when we talk about the miracles of Jesus, I share with my friend, I'm going to show a bunch of outside of the Bible, extra biblical witnesses that talk about the existence of Jesus. So that you can know that there is many, many things that you can know about Jesus, even if the Bible was not written outside of the Bible, which would kind of take away the whole legend thing. But we haven't discussed that yet, so we'll come back to that at a later on point in time. Okay? And then you got to think about what's the conclusion if we come over to this one. but we'll leave that one for a later time too. 5-minute break.
Thank you.
There you go.
Sounds good.